Okay, I think I'm on. Here we are, last artist of the year. Thank you so much, everyone who's volunteered, and hopefully we have time for this last one. The project is cool and short, so it should be less than an hour lesson. The artist is Arp, Jean Hans Arp. Let's see if I can get the. So here we are. Here he is. He's sitting right there, looking rather interesting with his art in the background. Anyways, okay. So he is a Dadaist. And if you know anything about that, expect some crazy. So the kids, I think, will just be interested in how different he is. So the big thing that was new with him is that rather than normally artists would be like, okay, I'm going to go paint something beautiful, or I have, they found a subject and they wanted to make it. Like Michelangelo was commissioned to make the David, or, they had an idea beforehand. Arp wanted the art to make itself. He was just like the vehicle for the art to appear. He wasn't trying to express a conscious idea, more like a subconscious idea, which I don't know how much you can explain that to them, but just the idea of he would create something and then be like, oh, this is what it is, instead of usually you do vice versa. And he called it automatic creation. So basically today we're going to be learning about that. Not today, but when you do your project, they're going to be learning about that, and they're going to be doing their own automatic creation. He would say, like, all I do is move my hands and the art makes itself. So he definitely has a different way of looking at art that I think they'll find interesting. Art based on chance. So, and he would do a lot of collages. The last thing that we did was kind of a collage, so I've gone in a different direction than using paper, because we used cut paper with Ringgold. I mean, it was not the same, but just to use like a different medium, we'll be using a different one. But you can talk about collage. That was what he used a lot. So he would tear the paper into pieces. He would just drop them onto the canvas and paste them wherever they fell, saying, okay, the art is making itself. I'm just dropping it. Now, whether that's actually, is that really possible? You can talk to them about that, because obviously he chose the paper, he chose what colors, he's the one who moved his hands. So it's not completely random, but he also believed that like ideas from his subconscious could be coming out that way. So yeah, again, he didn't begin with a subject. He would make the piece trying to minimize his conscious mind controlling the art, and then see what he came up with. Now you can talk to them about whether it's really, like I said, possible for an artist to not really be in control of what they're creating. But it is at least an interesting approach. So he got together with a bunch of other artists and started the Dada movement. It's kind of absurdist, a reaction against all the wars. This is in between the First and Second World Wars. A lot of just trying to go in the opposite direction of that. That's kind of like annihilation, destruction, and do some sort of positive creation, but instead of not really trying to make meaning or find meaning, just saying, hey, the whole world is absurd. Look at all this crazy stuff happening around us. Making like crazy absurdist art that doesn't make any more sense than war, really. So here's a shirt front and a fork. To me, the shirt front looks like a tooth with eyes on it. And then the mustache hat, kind of just examples of, to kids, will just look silly, just like how this is silly art. And we're going to have a book that you can choose to read, like a kid's book that kind of gives a funny idea of what Dada is. But that's basically all you need to do right there. So here's some of his automatic paintings. Like we talked about his automatic creations, he would just put his hand down and let his hand randomly move around the paper and see what he'd come up with, not trying to control the drawing, and then giving it a name afterwards. You can ask them, what does this look like to you? If they have extra time at the end of the project that we're doing, you might let them do that. If you have kids who finish early, they could do automatic drawings. So he would also do sculptures. He actually did a lot of sculptures, which to me seems harder to not have a plan for your sculpture. But I guess you can see, looking at these, he'd do a lot of organic shapes. He would just kind of interact with the medium and see, he would find his object. And then once the object started to emerge, he probably had more of a say in how it was molded than with just the collage where he would drop the paper on. But he did kind of let the form emerge and be like, oh, this is what it's turning into, and then help it along its way. So some examples of that type of work. This slideshow is going to be pretty short. Like I said, this is a short project because a lot of his stuff is just like, I mean, it's so out there. Like, how much are we really going to go into the theory of data? Not a ton, but interesting to see this different approach. Here is his most famous collage based on chance. Collage with squares arranged according to the laws of chance. What a title. You can ask them, does this look like it was made by chance? I mean, when I look at it, the squares, when you drop something onto a paper, you would think they would look more askew. They look like they're all lined up. So I'm not really sure how he did that, doing it randomly. But you can talk to them about that. Does this look random? What do you think? What do you think of this art? Should this be like celebrated art? Because yeah, it is kind of that classic example of like, I could have done that. My 3-year-old sister could have done that at preschool. But this is the philosophy behind it. That is the what makes it so interesting. And just that was really innovative. So we're going to be doing something similar to that. Let's see if I can stop the... Here I am. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have... I'll show you some examples first. There's some made. And you're saying, what am I looking at? This is watercolor paper. So you're going to have watercolor paper. You're going to have a paintbrush and water, but we're not actually using watercolors. We are using this art tissue paper that it's called bleeding tissue paper. And when it goes onto the paper and it gets wet, it leaves a stain. So what they're going to do, we have so much tissue paper. There's a ton. They're cut into strips, actually. And they can pick, I mean, they could probably pick 7 or 8 colors. And they might not even really have room for that. They're not going to use that. Anyways, there's plenty. You can decide. Any number less than 10. You can decide on how many you want to let them choose of the papers. Just put like a whole pile of the tissue paper in the center of the desk with the paper. And so they can pick some colors, which again, that's where the artist is having a say in what the thing is going to look like at the end, because you pick the colors. And then they can cut it if they want. We'll have scissors. I just tore, so you can just tear pieces. Okay, have them tear up their pieces, a bunch of pieces, or cut a bunch of pieces. And then they can paint water onto the paper first and then drop them on in the automatic creation random way and see where everything falls, and then paint water on top of them. Or they can just let it fall and then paint the water. If the paper is wet, that will kind of help them stick in the place where they fall, but that means it will also take longer for it to dry. So you can do it either way. When I did mine, I painted it first, but then I realized that was taking longer to dry. And then you could just let them fall, then get the paintbrush wet and just paint them with water in place. So no matter what, they're picking their colors, tearing them or cutting them up, randomly dropping them onto the page, then painting over them with water. Don't need a ton of water. That's probably the big thing to stress, because if they don't get it too wet, it'll be much easier and they'll probably be able to just take it with them. If they get it super soggy, then you're going to have to let them dry on the drying rack. So they're going to paint with water over it. So we got our squares, and then I just paint with water over this, paint the whole thing. They have everything in place. It's all wet, and you need to leave it there just for a few minutes. So you can either, if you have older kids, I mean, they're just going to chat and it's fine. Just let them kind of let it sit for a few minutes, and then they're going to peel the paper off, and it's going to get their hands a little bit messy. There'll be some napkins in there. There's paper towels. They can just put the pieces onto that, because they'll be soggy, colorful pieces. And yeah, so they'll scrape it all off and basically see what they come up with. If you have younger kids or whatever, you just feel like you don't want them to visit, you can say, I'm going to give you 10 minutes or however long to like make your automatic creation. Then you can read the Dada book. I can't remember what it's called. It hasn't come in the mail yet. It's supposed to be really good. Anyways, it will be in there, and you can read it to them while they're waiting for it to dry if you want to do it that way. That will be available to you. So they'll peel all the wet tissue paper off and see what they come up with. Okay, we can see what it looks like. So so that's going to be pretty quick. I mean, it's just a pretty quick project, but I think it's pretty. I think it'll be fun. It's a new, different medium, a different way of approaching things. And then once it's done, they can say, okay, what did I make? What is the name of my creation here? I put different titles on the bottom. This was Leapfrog. I kind of thought that looked like a lily pad right there. I don't know. But so you can choose to mount them. I'll have black paper in there, or you can just let them take them. You could put the label straight on here. I'm open to different things, because I think that mounting them is kind of a pain, but it can look good. If the teacher wants to display them, then that option is available. And we have, can you see it says title and created by. Usually they just put their name on these labels, but it has a space for the title. I want them to come up with a title. Something fun that might be fun to do is to have them, when everyone's done at their table, kind of pass it around and have each person name it and see what they each see in each other's. I think that might be fun, maybe for, I don't know, second grade and up. Can just, so they each like look at each other's and be like, this could be called Dancing Ponies or whatever. But then they decide on their title for it once they see what they've created and put their name on there. So it's pretty straightforward, and it should be pretty simple. The one thing that might be difficult is if they get it soaking, and you might have to dry them and come back and mount them if your teacher wants it mounted and they're really wet. It just depends on how long it takes. It's possible they could be totally dry within a few minutes, and then if they are light with the water, and they would be able to be mounted then. I haven't taught the class yet, so I'm not sure. So I'm sorry if that's a little bit inconvenient. Sorry. But hopefully it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see what they come up with and to try something new. And that is our last project. And I'm sorry about how the middle school has been in the art room. They didn't tell me they were going to do that. So it looks like they have a few more days where they'll be testing in there. But I'll have this project on the art cart too. It's not all going to be stocked until Monday, even though I'm sending this video out before then. So you can, hopefully with the art cart, and we can get everyone done, even though the art room's being used for middle school testing sometimes. So thank you so much for volunteering this year. I hope that you've had fun. I hope you have fun with this last project, and hopefully you'll come back for next year. Yeah, thank you again.